Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've always been a bit of an empath. Grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other, and I learned the value of kindness and community from an early age. My parents were both nurses, and they instilled in me the importance of helping others, especially those in need. This upbringing shaped my worldview and led me to pursue a career in social work. After college, I moved to the suburbs for a job opportunity at a local nonprofit. The neighborhood I chose was nice enough, with well manicured lawns and tidy houses. It was managed by a homeowners association which took care of most of the exterior maintenance. At first, I was excited about not having to worry about yard work, but I soon realized that the association had its downsides too. One scorching summer day, I was working from home due to the extreme heat. The weather report said it was 90 degrees, but it felt even hotter. I looked out my window and saw a group of men working on a yard in our neighborhood. They were sweating profusely and I honestly felt bad for them. I needed to grab something from my car, so I headed outside. As I approached my vehicle, I noticed a few of the workers sitting on my stairs, trying to find some shade. When they saw me, they quickly started to get up. No, please stay. You're totally okay. They looked relieved and settled back down. As I was returning to my house, one of the men spoke up quietly. "Excuse me, ma'am. Would it be alright if I used your hose to refill my water bottle?" His request tugged at my heartstrings. Of course, they needed water in this heat. I tell him, "Just wait a moment. I'll bring you something better." I hurried inside and grabbed my pitcher of cold filtered water and some glasses. When I came back out, their faces lit up with surprising gratitude. "Here you go, guys, drink up." As I poured water for each of them, I noticed one of the younger workers, barely out of his teens, looking emotional. His eyes were watery and he seemed hesitant to take a glass. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, ma'am. It's just, I asked someone down the street if I could use their hose and they yelled at me, said we should just do our job and get out of their yard." I felt a surge of anger at this revelation. How could someone be so cruel? That's terrible. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Please drink as much as you need. You're all welcome to use my hose or ask for water anytime you're working here. The workers thanked me profusely, gulping down the cool water. As they finished, one of them spoke up. "Ma'am, you don't know how much this means to us. It's not just the heat, the air quality warning makes it feel even worse out here." I tell him, "I can imagine. Please take care of yourselves. Don't hesitate to take breaks when you need them." As they prepared to get back to work, they insisted on bringing the empty glasses back to my door. Later that afternoon, I heard a commotion outside. Curious, I peeked out my window to see a woman I recognized from down the street. Let's call her Karen. She was yelling at the workers. "I told you to stay off my property. You're all lazy, trying to get out of doing your job." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Without hesitation, I stepped outside and approached the scene. "Excuse me? What seems to be the problem here?" "These workers keep loitering on my property. They are here to work, not take breaks every 5 minutes. Ma'am, it's dangerously hot out here. They need to stay hydrated and take breaks to avoid heat exhaustion." "That's not my problem. I pay the homeowners association fees, and I expect the work to get done without all this nonsense." "Actually, it is your problem. If these workers get sick because they can't take necessary breaks, who do you think will be liable?" "The homeowners association, which means all of us, including you." Karen looked taken aback, but she wasn't backing down. "Well, they can take their breaks elsewhere, not on my property." "Fine, they can use my yard and my water, and I'll be sure to let the homeowners association know about your concerns and your treatment of these workers." Karen's face turned red, but before she could respond, I turned to the workers. "Guys, feel free to use my yard for shade and breaks. My offer for water still stands." The workers nodded gratefully, and Karen stormed off, muttering under her breath. Later that evening, I drafted an email to the homeowners association detailing the incident and suggesting we implement guidelines for treating contracted workers humanly, especially in extreme weather conditions. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more neighbors offering water and shade to the workers. Karen seemed to be avoiding me, but I didn't mind. Sometimes standing up to entitlement is necessary to create positive change. And in this case, a little kindness went a long way in making our community a better place for everyone, even if it was just one glass of water at a time. I'm a middle aged guy living in a quiet neighborhood in a small town. I've always been a bit of a loner, preferring the company of my garden and my books to most people. Don't get me wrong, I'm not antisocial, just particular about my space and my peace. I've lived in this house for about 15 years now. It used to belong to my parents and I inherited it when they passed away. The house holds a lot of memories and I've put a lot of work into maintaining it and the garden. My fence isn't anything fancy, just a simple wooden one that marks the boundary of my property. It's not meant to keep anyone out, really, it's more of a symbol. A line that says, "This is where my space begins." Everything was fine until about 6 months ago when this teenager started walking past my house on his way back from school. At first, I didn't pay much attention to him. Just another kid, right? But then I started noticing this smell. It was faint at first, but it got stronger over time. It took me a while to figure out what was happening, but when I did, I was furious. This kid, this entitled little jerk, was using my fence as his personal urinal almost every day. He'd stop by my fence and relieve himself. Can you believe it? Who does that? The first time I caught him in the act, I was so shocked I could barely speak, but I managed to confront him. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" The kid looked at me completely unfazed, like what he was doing was the most normal thing in the world. "What does it look like I'm doing?" "It looks like you're urinating on my fence." "Stop that right now." "Chill out, old man. It's just a fence." "Just a fence? This is my property. You can't just go around peeing on people's fences." "Whatever. I gotta go." And just like that, he zipped up and walked away, leaving me standing there, mouth agape, next to my now smelly fence. I thought that would be the end of it. Surely after being caught and confronted, he wouldn't do it again, right? Wrong. The very next day, there he was, bold as brass, relieving himself on my fence. This time I was prepared. I marched right up to him, phone in hand. "I am calling the police if you don't stop this right now." The teenager just rolled his eyes at me. "Go ahead. They won't do anything. It's your word against mine, and I'll just say you're a crazy old man harassing me." I hate to admit it, but he had a point. I didn't have any proof, and I doubted the police would take this seriously, but I wasn't about to give up. "Look, kid, I don't know what your problem is. This has to stop. Use a bathroom like a normal person. You're not the boss of me. I'll pee where I want." I was that he was gone again, leaving me fuming and my fence reeking. This went on for weeks. I tried everything I could think of. I put up signs saying no public urination and property under surveillance. I even tried spraying the fence with a supposedly bad-smelling repellent, which by the way made things worse because now my fence smelled like pee and chemicals, but nothing worked. Every time I confronted him, it was the same story. "Stop peeing on my fence." "Make me, old man." "I'm serious. This is disgusting and illegal." "Prove it." "No one will believe you." It was driving me crazy. The smell was awful and I couldn't enjoy my garden anymore. I felt helpless and angry. This kid was ruining my peace, my property, and there seemed to be nothing I could do about it. I started watching the fence like a hawk, determined to catch him in the act again. But he was sneaky. He'd wait until I was distracted or gone, and then he'd do his business. I even considered setting up cameras, but that felt like an invasion of privacy. Ironically, I was more concerned about that than he was about invading my space. One day after another failed confrontation, I was at my wit's end. I asked him, "Why? Why are you doing this?" "Because I can." "Because it's funny to watch you get all worked up. What are you going to do about it, huh?" That was the last straw. I realized that this kid wasn't going to stop. He was enjoying this, enjoying tormenting me, and in that moment something in me snapped. I decided that if he wanted to act like an animal, marking his territory, I'd treat him like one. Now, I am not proud of what I did next, but I was desperate. I am good with my hands, always have been. I'd done some electrical work around the house before, so I came up with a plan. I rigged up a low voltage electrical current to run through the fence. Not enough to cause any real harm, mind you, just enough to give a nasty shock to anyone who touched it while, say, urinating on it. I set it up carefully, making sure it was only active during the times he usually passed by. I also put up more warning signs just to cover myself legally. Warning, electric fence, they said. I figured if he ignored these, like he ignored all the others, well, that was on him. For a few days, nothing happened. I started to think maybe he'd finally given up his disgusting habit. But then one afternoon I heard it, a yelp followed by a splash, and then crying. I peeked out my window and there he was, the entitled jerk, standing there with a wet patch spreading across his pants, looking shocked and panicked. He was dancing around shaking his hands like he'd just touched something hot. What the hell? What did you do? I walked out calmly, trying hard not to smile. Oh, didn't you see the signs? Clearly says electric fence. You can't do that. That's illegal. Is it? I'm pretty sure it's illegal to repeatedly urinate on someone's property too. Maybe we should call the police and sort this out? The kid's face went pale. He looked down at his wet pants, then back at me, then at the fence. I could see the gears turning in his head as he realized he'd been caught. Well, and truly this time. You're crazy. You're a psycho. No, I'm just a man who's tired of having his property used as a toilet. Now, are you going to stop this nonsense, or do we need to involve your parents and the authorities? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and ran down the street, still crying and trying to pull up his pants. After that day, I never saw him urinate on my fence again. In fact, for a while, he crossed the street to avoid walking past my house altogether. Eventually, he started using my side of the street again, but he always hurried past, never making eye contact. Part of me feels bad about resorting to such extreme measures, but another part of me, the part that had to endure months of the smell and disrespect, feels like it was justified. I mean, what else was I supposed to do? Let some entitled brat continue to use my property as his personal bathroom? I took down the electric fence after a few weeks. It had served its purpose, and I didn't want to risk anyone else accidentally getting shocked. But I lift up one sign, right where he used to do his business. It simply says, think twice. A little reminder just in case he ever gets any ideas about resuming his old habits. My tale starts when I had a nasty fall during a hiking trip. I slipped on some loose gravel and tumbled down a steep incline. The result? A fractured tibia and a whole lot of pain. The doctors patched me up and fitted me with a leg brace, warning me that recovery would take time and patience. As if that wasn't enough, my mom's health had been declining over the past year. She'd been diagnosed with a degenerative condition that affected her mobility, and she recently started using a wheelchair full time. It was a tough adjustment for all of us, but we were determined to make the best of it. So there we were, my sister, my mom, and I heading out for a nice dinner at our favorite restaurant. It was meant to be a little celebration, my first proper outing since the accident, and a chance for mom to enjoy a change of scenery. Little did we know we were about to run into a real piece of work. As we pulled into the restaurant parking lot, I spotted an open, handicapped spot. Perfect, I thought. Just what we needed. But then I noticed a blue car across from it, starting to back out to another handicapped space. When they saw us coming, they suddenly pulled back in. I figured they were either waiting for us to pass or just straighten out their parking job. No big deal, right? Wrong. As soon as we parked in the open spot, this woman, let's call her Karen, marched over to us. She stood there tapping her foot impatiently as we started to get out of the car. That's when the madness began. You stole my spot. I was just about to back into it when you came along and snatched it. Excuse me? We had no idea you were planning to move there. I have an 80-year-old grandmother in a wheelchair. We need that spot more than you do, Sister says. How were we supposed to know that? We just saw an open spot and took it. I had my brake lights on. You should have seen them. We were coming from the side. There is no way we could have seen your brake lights from that angle. Karen, ignoring my point completely, you two don't even look handicapped. Now, I'll admit, at this point I was starting to lose my cool. Here was this perfectly healthy looking woman, probably in her 30s, yelling at us about not looking handicapped enough. Me gesturing to my mom. Our mother is in a wheelchair, and I'm wearing a leg brace. Is that handicapped enough for you? Sister says, we have just as much right to this spot as anyone else. Karen getting red in the face, but my grandmother. Me finally snapping, oh, for crying out loud. Just back off, will you? I know. Not my proudest moment, but sometimes you just reach your limit, you know? Karen stormed off. Her parents trailed behind her with her mom shooting us a death glare that could have melted steel. Her dad was using a cane, which I'll admit made me feel a twinge of guilt for a split second. But then I noticed something that made my blood boil all over again. There was no wheelchair-bound grandmother in sight. Sister whispering, "Did you see that?" Yeah, I did. Where is this desperate need for a handicap spot now? We helped our mom out of the car and into her wheelchair. We made our way into the restaurant, determined not to let Karen and her entitled attitude ruin our evening. As luck would have it, we were seated at a table near the window, giving us a clear view of the parking lot. Wouldn't you know it? A few minutes later we saw Karen and her family leaving. They walked right past her car and headed down the street. Apparently, they hadn't even been planning to eat at the restaurant. They'd just been using the handicap spot as a convenient place to drop off Karen's grandmother, who was probably at some nearby shop or appointment. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well and not letting the Karens of the world get you down. Hello there. I lost my job at the factory back in my hometown. The place had been struggling for years, and finally they just couldn't keep the doors open anymore. With bills piling up and no prospects in sight, I knew I had to make a change. That's when I saw the job listing for a night shift position in a city a few hours away. It wasn't ideal, but beggars can be choosers, right? I applied, and to my surprise they wanted me to start right away. I had to find a place to live and fast. The only option available on such short notice was this apartment in a homeowners association community. Now, I'd heard horror stories about these places, but I figured it couldn't be that bad. Boy, was I wrong. The owner seemed nice enough when I met him. He handed me a thick rule book and said, "Here is everything you need to know about living here. Make sure you follow the rules if you want to use the amenities." I nodded, thinking it was pretty standard stuff. Little did I know that this rule book would become the bane of my existence. The first few days were okay. I'd come home from my night shift, crash into bed, and sleep through the day. But then the knocking started. It was a property manager. "Hey, open up. I need to get to the electric panel." Me, groggy and confused. "What? It's the middle of the day. Can't this wait?" "No, it can't. Come on, let me in." This became a regular occurrence. 2, sometimes 3 times a week, this guy would show up unannounced, demanding access to my apartment because it housed the building's electric panel. Now, I am no expert, but I'm pretty sure checking the electric panel isn't an emergency. It needs to happen multiple times a week. I tried to be reasonable. I left a note on my door. "Please provide 24-hour notice before entry, as per state law and homeowners association rules. I work nights and sleep during the day. Thank you for your understanding." You know what that property manager did? He ripped the note off and kept barging in like he owned the place. It was driving me insane. I couldn't get a decent day's sleep if my life depended on it. Fed up, I decided to confront him directly. "Look, I understand you need access to the panel, but you can't keep coming in without notice. It's against the law and the homeowners association rules." The property manager scoffing, "I don't care about your sleep schedule. My job comes first. If you don't like it, move out." That's when things really took a turn for the worse. Suddenly I was getting fines for the most ridiculous things. A flower pot slightly out of place? Fine. My curtains, the wrong shade of beige? Fine. It was like they were trying to nickel and dime me out of the house and home. Then came the threatening letters. They'd appear outside my door warning of eviction if I didn't comply with the property manager's requests. It was clear they were trying to bully me into submission. But I wasn't about to roll over. I knew my rights, and I was going to stand my ground. So I did what any reasonable person would do when faced with an unreasonable situation. I barricaded my door. The next time the property manager tried to barge in, he was met with a solid wall of furniture. Property manager banging on a door. What is this? Open up right now. Me through the door. Sorry. Can't hear you over the sound of my legal right to privacy. Oh, he was furious. The fines started coming in even faster after that. But here's a kicker. My rental agreement only mentioned the base rent. There wasn't a word about being responsible for these ridiculous fines. I almost felt bad for the owner. Almost. As my lease neared its end, it became clear that I wouldn't be welcome to renew. But by that point, I was more than ready to leave. I quit my job and decided to get as far away from that place as possible. Life's too short to deal with entitled jerks who think rules don't apply to them. On my last day, as I was loading up my car, the property manager came storming over. You think you've won, don't you? We'll make sure no one in this area ever rents to you again. Me, laughing. Trust me, I wouldn't live in another homeowners association if you paid me. Enjoy your power trip. I hear it's lovely this time of year. So here I am starting over again. But this time I've got a new rule of my own. No homeowners associations. No entitled property managers. And definitely no apartments with electric panels. Sometimes the best lessons come from the worst experiences. And me, I'm ready for whatever comes next, as long as it doesn't involve surprise inspections at 2 p.m.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.